The roar of 20,000 voices echoed through the massive arena on Keth 7, the galaxy's most feared prison moon. High above the fighting pit, wealthy aliens sat in comfortable boxes, sipping exotic drinks, while watching creatures tear each other apart below. The sand was stained dark with blood from countless battles, and the air smelled of death and fear. Han Solo crouched in the shadows beneath the arena floor, listening to the crowd cheer for violence. His hands shook as he checked his makeshift. Weapons one more time. A rusted metal pipe and a sharp piece of broken glass were all he had to face whatever monster they would send against him today. "Another day in paradise," he muttered in Korean, knowing the alien guards could not understand him. The heavy door at the far end of his small waiting cell creaked open. A tall, scaly Vorthak guard stepped inside, his yellow eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. The reptilian creature wore thick armor and carried an energy weapon that could kill Han Solo with one shot. "Time to entertain our guests, human," the guard hissed in broken galactic standard. "Today you face the crystal scorpion of Nexus Prime. Many warriors have died screaming against its claws." Han Solo stood up slowly, his muscles aching from his last fight 3 days ago. The cuts on his arms had barely healed, and his left shoulder still hurt when he moved it wrong. But he had learned something important during his 2 years in this hell. The aliens thought humans were just smart animals, good for nothing but fighting and dying for entertainment. They never expected him to survive this long. "I am ready," Han Solo said simply. The guard laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. "We shall see, beast." The floor beneath Han Solo began to rise, carrying him up into the blazing lights of the arena. The crowd's noise hit him like a physical wall. Thousands of different alien species packed the stands, all here to watch him die. Some looked like giant insects, others resembled walking plants, and many were creatures he had never seen before in his life. In the expensive seats high above, he could see the Vorthak nobles who owned this place. They wore fine robes and jewelry made from the bones of defeated gladiators. To them, he was nothing more than a pet that could hold a weapon. The arena was a perfect circle of white sand, surrounded by walls 30 feet high. There was nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. 4 large screens showed his face to the crowd, along with information about his previous fights. The announcer's voice boomed across the stadium in 12 different languages. "Citizens of the Confederacy, today we present the human called Han Solo. This creature has survived 47 battles in our arena. Will today be the day he finally falls?" The crowd cheered louder. Han Solo ignored them and focused on the large gate across from him. Soon it would open, and something very dangerous would come out wanting to kill him. Deep beneath the arena, in a different cell, Young Bin pressed his face against the small window in his door. He could hear the crowd above and knew his friend was fighting for his life again. Young Bin was an engineer, not a warrior. The Vorthak had captured him when they destroyed the human colony where he worked. They said he was a saboteur, but that was a lie. He had only been trying to help people escape. "Please be safe," Young Bin whispered in Korean. "Come back to me, my friend." Up in the arena, the gate began to open with a loud, grinding noise. Han Solo raised his weapons and took a fighting stance. The crystal scorpion that emerged was bigger than he had expected. It stood 8 feet tall and 12 feet long, its body covered in sharp, glowing crystals that could cut through metal. Its tail curved over its back, ending in a stinger as long as Han Solo's arm. The creature's many eyes fixed on him, and it made a sound like breaking glass. Then it charged. Han Solo rolled to the side as the scorpion's claws slammed into the sand, where he had been standing. The creature was fast, but Han Solo had learned to be faster. He struck at one of its legs with his metal pipe, and sparks flew as metal hit crystal. The scorpion spun around, its tail whipping through the air. Han Solo ducked, but not quite fast enough. The stinger grazed his chest, tearing through his shirt, and leaving 3 deep cuts in his skin. He stumbled backward, feeling warm blood running down his body. The crowd cheered louder when they saw his blood. They loved it when the fighters got hurt. It made the show more exciting for them. Hansol circled around the creature looking for a weak spot. All those crystals were like armor, protecting the scorpion's soft parts underneath. But every armor had gaps, and every creature had weaknesses. He just had to find them before the monster found a way to kill him. The scorpion charged again, this time trying to grab him with its massive claws. Hansol jumped onto its back, using the creature's own momentum to carry him forward. He raised his glass shard and drove it down between two crystals near the scorpion's head. The creature screamed and bucked like an angry horse. Hansol held on tight, trying to push the glass deeper. Green blood sprayed from the wound, burning his hands like acid. The pain was terrible, but he did not let go. Finally, the scorpion threw him off. Hansol hit the sand hard and rolled, gasping for breath. His hands were covered in green burns, and his chest was bleeding worse now. The scorpion turned toward him, its eyes full of rage and pain. This was the dangerous moment. Wounded animals fought the hardest. And this creature was angry enough to take risks. It charged at him with all its speed, claws spread wide and stinger ready to strike. Hansol tried to dodge, but his injured body moved too slowly. The scorpion's claw caught his leg and threw him across the arena. He hit the wall with a sickening crack and fell to the sand, unable to move. His left leg was broken, and he could taste blood in his mouth. The crowd was on their feet now, screaming with excitement. This was what they had come to see. The human was finished, and the crystal scorpion would claim another victory. But as Hansol lay there, barely conscious, something unexpected happened. The crowd suddenly fell silent. Even the scorpion stopped moving and turned to look at something behind Hansol. From the deep shadows beneath the arena, a new shape emerged. It was tall and dark, moving with liquid grace across the bloody sand. The creature stood 8 feet tall, covered in sleek black fur that seemed to absorb the light around it. Its eyes were bright amber, and they held an intelligence that made the watching aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. The guards in the arena control room began shouting at each other in confusion. This was not supposed to happen. The Shadow Beast was never released during regular fights. It was kept in the deepest, most secure cells for a reason. The dark creature approached Hansol's broken body while the crystal scorpion watched nervously. Everyone in the arena held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The shadow beast moved across the arena sand like flowing water, its amber eyes never leaving Hansol's broken body. The massive creature's black fur rippled in the harsh arena lights, and each step was completely silent despite its great size. The 20,000 aliens in the stands watched in stunned silence, not understanding what they were seeing. The crystal scorpion backed away nervously, its many eyes tracking the new threat. This dark creature was bigger and more dangerous than any opponent it had faced before. Green blood still dripped from the wound Hansol had given it, but now the scorpion's pain was forgotten. Survival was all that mattered. Commander Thex 9 stood up in his luxury box, his scaly hands gripping the railing so hard his claws left scratches in the metal. The Vorthak leader's yellow eyes were wide with shock and anger. This was not supposed to happen. The shadow beast was kept in the deepest cells for a very good reason. "How did that thing get out?" he hissed at his assistant, a smaller Vorthak who was frantically checking his data pad. "Sir, the records show all security doors are still locked. There is no sign of system failure or breach." Thex 9's tail lashed back and forth, a sign of extreme agitation. "That creature has been in our deepest vault for 8 months. It has never shown interest in anything except trying to escape." Down in the arena, the shadow beast reached Hansol's motionless form. The human lay on his side, blood pooling beneath him from the deep cuts on his chest. His broken leg was bent at a wrong angle, and his breathing was shallow and painful. The dark creature lowered its massive head and sniffed carefully at Hansol's wounds. Its amber eyes showed concern and intelligence that made the watching aliens feel uncomfortable. This was not the behavior of a mindless beast. This was something much more complex and frightening. The crystal scorpion, seeing an opportunity, began to move forward again. If it could kill both opponents quickly, it might survive this strange situation. Its crystalline claws clicked against the sand as it approached. The shadow beast looked up at the advancing scorpion and made a sound that was not quite a growl and not quite a word. The sound carried across the silent arena, and somehow everyone who heard it understood the message perfectly. Stay away. The scorpion stopped moving. In all its years of fighting, it had never heard anything like that sound. There was intelligence in it, and purpose, and a promise of terrible consequences for anyone who ignored the warning. Very carefully, the shadow beast placed its arms under Han Solo's body and lifted him from the blood-soaked sand. The human was unconscious and could not resist, but the creature handled him with surprising gentleness. It held Han Solo against its chest like a parent carrying a sleeping child. The crowd began to murmur in confusion. This was not entertainment anymore. This was something they had never seen before and did not understand. Many aliens in the stands started to shift nervously in their seats. Commander Thex 9 grabbed his communication device. Security teams to the arena floor immediately. Tranquilize both creatures and return them to their cells. But before the guards could respond, the shadow beast did something that shocked everyone even more. It looked directly up at the commanders, box, and made that same not-quite-growl sound. Only this time the message was different. Everyone in the arena heard it clearly, though none of them understood how. Do not interfere. Then the creature turned and walked toward the gate it had emerged from, still carrying Han Solo. The crystal scorpion backed out of the way, unwilling to challenge something that radiated such quiet danger. The arena gates opened automatically as the shadow beast approached, though no guard had given the command. "Stop them!" Thex 9 screamed into his communicator. "Do not let that creature leave the arena!" Security guards rushed onto the sand, carrying stun weapons and nets. But when they tried to approach the shadow beast, something strange happened. Their weapons would not fire, and their equipment stopped working. The creature had not done anything visible, but somehow all their technology failed at once. The shadow beast walked through the line of guards as if they were not there, carrying Han Solo toward the tunnels beneath the arena. The guards could only watch helplessly as their prey escaped. Deep in the prison cells below, Young Bin heard the commotion above and pressed his face against the small window in his door. The corridor outside was full of running guards and flashing alarm lights. Something big was happening, and he hoped it meant Han Solo was still alive. The heavy door to the cell block opened with a loud clang, and Young Bin stepped back in surprise. The shadow beast entered the corridor, still carrying Han Solo's unconscious form. The creature's amber eyes found Young Bin's cell immediately, as if it had been looking for this exact location. "Open the door," the shadow beast said in perfect Korean. Young Bin stumbled backward in shock. The creature had spoken. Not in Galactic Standard or Vorthak, but in his own language. The words were deep and slightly strange, but completely understandable. "You can talk," Young Bin whispered. "Open the door," the creature repeated, more urgently this time. "He is hurt badly." Young Bin pressed the emergency release button inside his cell, something the guards had forgotten to disable. The door slid open, and the shadow beast carefully carried Han Solo inside. The creature laid him gently on Young Bin's narrow bed and stepped back. "Water," the creature said. "Clean cloth. Medicine if you have it." Young Bin rushed to get the few supplies he had managed to hide from the guards. A small bottle of water, some torn fabric from his spare shirt, and a tiny tube of healing gel he had saved from his last medical check. It was not much, but it was all he had. As Young Bin began to clean Han Solo's wounds, The shadow beast watched carefully. Its amber eyes followed every movement, learning how humans cared for their injured. When Young Bin struggled to stop the bleeding from the deep chest cuts, the creature gently moved his hands aside. The shadow beast placed its own hands over the wounds and closed its eyes. A soft, warm light began to glow from its palms. Young Bin watched in amazement as the bleeding slowed and the cuts began to close. It was not complete healing, but it was enough to save Han Sol's life. "How did you do that?" Young Bin asked in wonder. The creature opened its eyes and looked at him sadly. "My people are healers as well as guardians. We learned these gifts from the humans who raised us." "Humans raised you?" "The Kim family on New Jeju Colony. They found me when I was very small and alone. They taught me their language, their ways, their kindness." The creature's voice became heavy with grief. "The Vorthak killed them all when they came to steal me." Young Bin felt tears in his eyes. "I am sorry for your loss." "My name is Midnight," the creature said. "The Kim children gave me that name because I was born during the darkest night of winter. What do you call your friend?" "Han Sol. He was a Marine before they captured him. He has kept us all alive in this place." Midnight nodded and settled down beside the bed, clearly intending to stay and guard the injured human. "Then I will keep him alive now. It is what my family would have wanted." Outside the cell, alarm sirens continued to wail as guards searched frantically for the escaped creature. But they would not find Midnight easily. The creature knew every hidden passage and forgotten corner of the prison, learned during 8 months of careful observation and planning. As Han Sol slept under Midnight's watchful guard, Young Bin began to understand that their situation had changed completely. They were no longer alone in this terrible place. They had found an ally with powers and knowledge that might just help them survive. But first Han Sol had to recover from his injuries, and that would take time they might not have. 3 days passed before Han Sol opened his eyes. When he did, the first thing he saw was Midnight sitting beside his bed like a giant black guardian. The creature's amber eyes were watching him with gentle concern, and one massive hand rested protectively on Han Sol's arm. "You are awake," Midnight said in Korean. "Good. I was beginning to worry." Han Sol tried to sit up but winced as pain shot through his chest. The wounds from the crystal scorpion had healed better than expected, but his broken leg was still wrapped in makeshift bandages. "You can talk." "Yes." Your friend Young Bin was also surprised by this. Midnight's voice carried a note of sadness. "The Vorthak believe we are simple beasts because we do not speak their language. They never bothered to learn that we might speak others." Young Bin appeared beside the bed, carrying a small bowl of the thin soup that served as prison food. "You need to eat something. You lost a lot of blood." As Han Sol slowly ate, Midnight began to tell them both the full story of how he came to be in this terrible place. He spoke of the Kim family who had found him as a baby, alone and afraid in the forests of New Jeju Colony. They had taken him into their home and raised him as one of their own children. "Little Soo-jin taught me to count," Midnight said, his eyes distant with memory. "Minho showed me how to tend the garden. Their grandmother Hai-wan told me stories about Earth and the old ways. They were my family in every way that mattered." The creature's hands clenched into fists as he continued. "The Vorthak came without warning. They had heard rumors of humans living with dangerous beasts and came to investigate. When they saw me, they decided I would make a good prize for their arena." Han Sol reached out and placed his hand on Midnight's arm. "What happened to your family?" "They tried to protect me. Minho stood between the Vorthak soldiers and our home. Grandmother Hai-wan refused to tell them where I was hiding. They killed them all." Midnight's voice became very quiet. Soo-jin was only 8 years old. The three of them sat in silence for a long moment, each thinking about the cruelty of the Vorthak and the families they had lost. Finally, Young Bin spoke. "How long have you been planning to escape from this place?" Midnight looked up, and for the first time since they had met him, his amber eyes held hope instead of sadness. "Since the day they brought me here. I have learned every tunnel, every passage, every weakness in their security. But I could never leave alone." "Why not?" Hansol asked. "Because my family taught me that you never abandon those who cannot protect themselves. There are other prisoners here who are not fighters, who would die if left behind. I could not live with myself if I escaped and left them to suffer." Young Bin leaned forward with interest. "You know about the other prisoners?" "I know about all of them. The human woman Nari, who was a diplomat before they captured her. The young man Dong Hyun, who worked with computers and still knows how to access their systems. The elderly couple from the farming colony who have never hurt anyone in their lives. There are 43 humans in this prison, and most of them are not gladiators." Hansol felt a spark of something he had not experienced in 2 years. Hope. "You want to get everyone out?" "I want to get everyone out," Midnight confirmed. "But I needed allies. People the other humans would trust and follow. You have kept them alive with your fighting and your courage. They respect you." Over the next several hours, Midnight showed them drawings he had scratched into the walls of various cells during his months of exploration. The pictures showed the layout of the entire prison complex, including areas that even the guards rarely visited. There were old maintenance tunnels, abandoned storage areas, and emergency systems that had been forgotten when the prison was expanded. "The power systems are controlled from 3 locations," Midnight explained, pointing to different areas on his map. "If we can disable all 3 at the same time, the entire prison will lose gravity control, lighting, and communications for at least 10 minutes. Long enough to reach the shuttle bays," Young Bin said, studying the drawings with his engineers. "Aye. But we need to coordinate with the other prisoners. They have to be ready to move the moment the lights go out," Hansol added. Midnight nodded. "That is where you come in. The guards think I am just an animal. They do not watch me as carefully as they watch you. I can carry messages between the human cells without raising suspicion." Young Bin frowned thoughtfully. "What about the Vorthak response? They will send security teams after us." "The shuttle bay is at the opposite end of the complex from the main security center," Midnight explained. "If we move fast enough, we can be away before they organize a proper pursuit." Hansol tried to stand up and immediately sat back down, as his broken leg reminded him of its condition. "How long before I can walk properly?" 2 weeks, maybe 3, Midnight said. "But we cannot wait that long. The guards are already suspicious about my behavior. Commander Thex 9 has ordered increased security around the human cells. Then we need to start preparing the others now," Hansol decided. "Even if I cannot fight, I can still plan and coordinate." Over the following days, Midnight began his secret mission of contacting the other human prisoners. He would disappear during the guard shift changes, moving through ventilation shafts and forgotten passages to reach different parts of the prison. Each time he returned, he brought news of another ally willing to join their escape attempt. Nari, the former diplomat, had immediately understood the importance of Midnight's intelligence and began organizing the non-combatant prisoners. Dong Hyun, the young hacker, confirmed that he could still access some of the prison's computer systems from the work terminals in the maintenance areas. The elderly farming couple, Kyung-soo and Mi-young, volunteered to help carry supplies and assist anyone who became injured during the escape. But the most important discovery came when Midnight returned from visiting the women's section of the prison. He carried with him a small electronic device that Nari had managed to hide from the guards. "She says this can communicate with ships in orbit," Midnight explained. "If we can reach the communication array on the prison's upper levels, we might be able to call for help." Young Bin examined the device carefully. "This is military grade. Where did she get it?" "She was carrying diplomatic messages when the Vorthak captured her. They never found all of her equipment. Midnight's eyes gleamed with possibility. There might be human ships searching for survivors from the colonies the Vorthak destroyed. Hansol felt his heart racing with excitement and fear. Their simple escape plan was becoming something much bigger and more dangerous. If they could contact human forces, they might not just escape the prison. They might be able to strike back at the Vorthak who had destroyed so many innocent lives, but first they had to survive the next 2 weeks, while Hansol recovered and Midnight continued, building their network of allies. And they had to do it without Commander Thex 9 discovering what they were planning. As if summoned by their thoughts, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside their cell. Midnight quickly hid his drawings and settled back into his position as a simple guard animal. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. The heavy footsteps stopped outside their cell door. Through the small window, Hansol could see Commander Thex 9 standing in the corridor with 4 armed guards. The Vorthak leader's yellow eyes were cold with suspicion as he stared into the cell. "Open it," Thex 9 commanded. The door slid open with a loud clang. The commander stepped inside, his scaly hands clasped behind his back. He looked first at Hansol lying on the narrow bed, then at Yungbin sitting nervously in the corner, and finally at Midnight, who remained perfectly still beside the bed. "Interesting," Thex 9 said in Galactic Standard. "The beast stays close, to the injured human, almost like it is protecting him." Hansol kept his expression blank, pretending not to understand the alien language. Beside him, Midnight continued his act of being nothing more than an animal, though Hansol could feel the tension in the creature's muscles. "Sir," one of the guards spoke up, "should we separate them? The beast might be planning something." Thex 9 walked closer to Midnight, studying the creature with scientific interest. "No. This behavior is fascinating. I want to see how far this bond extends." The commander reached out as if to touch Midnight's head. The creature's amber eyes tracked the movement, but he remained motionless. Hansol held his breath, knowing that Midnight could easily kill the Vorthak leader with one swipe of his claws. At the last second, Thex 9 pulled his hand back. "Schedule the human for another arena fight in 1 week. I want to see if the beast will try to intervene again." "Sir, his leg is still broken," the guard protested. "Then it will be a more entertaining fight," Thex 9 replied coldly. "Perhaps. This time we will see the true nature of both creatures." After the Vorthak left, the 3 allies sat in worried silence. 1 week was not enough time for Hansol's leg to heal, and if he was forced into the arena again, their escape plan would be ruined. "We have to move faster," Hansol said quietly in Korean. Yungbin nodded. "Can you contact the others tonight?" Midnight's eyes gleamed with determination. "Yes. It is time to tell everyone that we move in 6 days, ready or not." That night, while the prison settled into its uneasy quiet, Midnight began the most dangerous part of his mission. He slipped out of their cell through a ventilation grate that Yungbin had loosened days earlier and made his way through the dark passages toward the women's section. Nari was waiting for him in her cell, having learned to recognize the soft sounds of his approach. The former diplomat listened carefully as Midnight explained the new timeline. 6 days, she repeated thoughtfully. "It can be done, but we will need to take more risks." "What kind of risks?" Midnight asked. "Donghyun needs access to the main computer terminal in the security center. Not just the maintenance terminals he has been using. That means someone will have to create a distraction big enough to draw the guards away." Midnight considered this. "What kind of distraction?" Nari smiled, but there was no humor in it. "A fight in the exercise yard, something that looks spontaneous but draws every available guard. While they are busy breaking it up, Donghyun can access the main systems and plant the viruses he needs." The next day, Midnight carried this plan to Donghyun in the maintenance section. The young hacker was excited by the possibility of accessing better computer systems, but worried about the timing. "I will need at least 15 minutes to do everything we discussed," Dong-hyun explained. Upload the virus to the power systems, disable the communication arrays, and open all the cell doors. Can you guarantee me 15 minutes? Leave that to me, Midnight replied. From Dong-hyun's section, Midnight made his way to the cells where the elderly couple Kyung-soo and Mi-young were held. Despite their age, both had volunteered for important roles in the escape plan. We can do it, Kyung-soo assured him. Mi-young knows these corridors as well as anyone. We have been prisoners here for 6 months, and I still remember my nurse. Training from 40 years ago, Mi-young added. If anyone gets hurt during the escape, I can help them. Midnight's next stop was the section where the non-combatant prisoners were held. These were humans who had been captured during raids, but were not strong enough or skilled enough for the arena. They included scientists, teachers, farmers, and children who had grown up in the prison. The children worried Midnight the most. The youngest was only 5 years old, too small to run fast or understand complex instructions. But Nari had a plan for them, too. The children will stay with the elderly and the injured, she had explained. They will be the last group to move, and only when we are sure the path is safe. By the 4th night, all the human prisoners knew their roles. The escape would begin at the start of the next shift change, when the fewest guards were on duty. Dong-hyun would disable the security systems, Midnight would lead the first group through the maintenance tunnels, and Nari would coordinate the movement of the larger groups through the main corridors. But on the 5th day, their careful planning almost fell apart. Commander Thex-9 appeared at their cell again, this time with a medical team. The human fights tomorrow, he announced. Make sure he can at least stand. The medical team injected Han Sol with powerful stimulants and temporary bone hardeners. The drugs would allow him to walk and fight for a few hours, but afterward the damage to his leg would be much worse. This is not medical treatment, Young Bin protested in Galactic Standard, breaking his usual silence. This is torture. Thex-9 looked at him with surprise. The engineer speaks. How interesting, and how foolish. He gestured to his guards. Take this one to solitary confinement. He is becoming too bold. Before Midnight could react, the guards had stunned Young Bin with their energy weapons and dragged him from the cell. The engineer was unconscious and could not hear Han Sol calling his name. Now they were down to 2 people in their cell, and one of them would be forced to fight in the arena the next day. Worse, Young Bin was their expert on the prison's technical systems. Without him, parts of their escape plan might fail. We stick to the original plan, Han Sol decided, even though his voice shook with worry for his friend. Young Bin would want us to get everyone else to safety. Midnight nodded, but his amber eyes were full of concern. What if you cannot walk properly in the arena? The drugs will not last long. Then you will have to do something that looks like you are trying to kill me, Han Sol said grimly. Make it convincing enough that the crowd believes it, but leave me alive long enough for Dong-hyun to disable the power systems. And if I cannot control how much damage I do to you? Han Sol met his friend's worried gaze steadily. Then I trust you to make the right choice. Save the others, even if you cannot. Save me. That night, as they made their final preparations, both human and creature knew that tomorrow would change everything. Either they would escape together and find freedom among the stars, or they would die in the attempt. But after months of suffering, in this terrible place, even death seemed better than giving up hope. The last message Midnight carried that night was to Nari in the women's section. Her reply was simple and determined. Tell everyone to be ready. Tomorrow, we go home. As the prison settled into its final quiet night, 43 humans and 1 umbral guardian prepared for the most dangerous gamble of their lives. In a few hours, they would either be free or dead, but they would not be prisoners anymore. The arena had never been more crowded. Word had spread throughout the Galactic Confederacy about the strange bond between the human gladiator and the shadow beast. Wealthy aliens had traveled from across the galaxy to witness what they expected would be the ultimate betrayal. They wanted to see the creature turn on the human who had trusted it. Han Solo stood at the arena entrance, his legs shaking from the drugs the medical team had forced into his body. The stimulants made his heart race and his vision blur, but they also dulled the pain from his broken leg enough that he could walk. He knew the effects would not last long. Across the arena, another gate was opening. Midnight emerged into the blazing lights, moving with his usual fluid grace. But Han Solo could see the tension in his friend's posture. The creature's amber eyes found his immediately, and for just a moment they shared a look of understanding. Commander. Thex 9 stood in his luxury box, practically trembling with anticipation. Around him, other Vorthak nobles placed bets on how quickly the beast would kill the human. They had no doubt about the outcome. In their experience, loyalty was just another word for weakness. "Citizens of the Confederacy," the announcer's voice boomed across the stadium, "today we witness the ultimate test of bonds between species. Will the beast remember its savage nature? Or has the human somehow corrupted its instincts?" The crowd cheered, but their excitement was different from usual. This was not just blood sport anymore. This was a test of everything they believed about, the natural order of the galaxy. In the underground passages, Dong-hyun crouched beside a maintenance terminal, his fingers dancing across the controls. The young hacker had managed to convince a guard that he needed to repair a ventilation system, and now he was using those precious minutes to access the prison's main computer network. "Come on," he whispered to himself in Korean as he worked. Just a little more time. In the women's section, Nari watched the arena feed on a small screen while coordinating the final preparations. The other prisoners were ready to move the moment the power systems failed. Everyone knew their route, their timing, and their backup plans, but everything depended on what happened in the arena over the next few minutes. Han Solo and Midnight circled each other slowly on the blood-stained sand. To the watching crowd, it looked like two predators sizing each other up. In reality, they were moving into position for the most difficult performance of their lives. The plan was simple in concept, but almost impossible to execute. They had to make their fight look real enough to convince 20,000 spectators and dozens of cameras, while actually working together to create the distraction Dong-hyun needed. Han Solo made the first move, swinging his makeshift weapon at Midnight's head. The creature dodged easily and struck back with his claws, carefully missing Han Solo's body by inches. To the crowd, it looked like the human had barely escaped death. They continued this deadly dance, each attack precisely calculated to look violent while causing minimal actual harm. Midnight's superior speed and strength made it easy for him to control the pace of the fight, but the real challenge was making Han Solo look like a worthy opponent instead of a helpless victim. The crowd was on its feet, cheering every near miss and apparent escape. But some of the more experienced fighters in the expensive seats were beginning to look suspicious. The combat was too evenly matched, too perfectly choreographed. Commander Thex 9 narrowed his yellow eyes as he watched. Something was wrong. The beast was holding back, and the human was lasting far longer than his injuries should have allowed. "Release the sandworms," he commanded suddenly. His assistant looked shocked. "Sir, that was not part of the scheduled." "Fight! Do it now!" Thex 9 snarled. "I want to see how loyal this creature really is when both their lives are in genuine danger." 4 gates around the arena floor began to open. From each one emerged a creature that made the crystal scorpion. Look harmless. Sandworms were 12 feet long, covered in razor-sharp spines, and filled with venom that could kill most species in minutes. They were usually used only for execution, not entertainment. Han Solo and Midnight looked around in alarm as the 4 deadly creatures entered the arena. This was not part of their plan. The sandworms began to spread out, surrounding the 2 allies with no regard for the performance they had been staging. In the maintenance tunnels, Dong Hyun's fingers flew even faster across his keyboard. He had heard the crowd's reaction change, and knew something had gone wrong. His virus was uploaded to 2 of the 3 power systems, but he needed more time to complete the job. The first sandworm attacked without warning, lunging at Han Sol with its poisonous fangs extended. Midnight moved faster than thought, throwing himself between the creature and the human. The worm's fangs sank deep into Midnight's shoulder instead of Han Sol's chest. The creature's venom began to work immediately. Midnight stumbled, his vision blurring as the poison spread through his body. But he did not fall. Instead, he grabbed the sandworm behind its head and threw it across the arena with a roar of pain and fury. "Midnight!" Han Sol shouted, rushing to his friend's side. All pretense was abandoned now. The humans supported the wounded creature as the other 3 sandworms closed in around them. In the stands, something strange began to happen. The aliens who had come to see betrayal and savagery were instead witnessing sacrifice and loyalty. Many of them had never seen anything like it. Some began to shift uncomfortably in their seats while others leaned forward with new interest. A second sandworm struck from behind, its spines raking across Han Sol's back and sending him sprawling in the sand. This time it was the human's turn to scream in pain as the creature's venom entered his bloodstream. Midnight, despite his own wounds, moved to protect Han Sol again. The creature was swaying now, barely able to stand, but he placed himself between the human and the remaining attackers. His amber eyes burned with determination, even as his body began to fail. The third sandworm prepared to strike, but suddenly the arena lights went out. Dong Hyun had finally completed his work. All 3 power systems failed simultaneously, plunging the entire prison complex into darkness. Emergency lighting flickered on a few seconds later, but it was too late. The escape had begun. In the confusion and darkness, something unexpected happened in the arena. Several of the alien spectators jumped down from the stands to help the wounded human and creature. Not all species in the galaxy were as cruel as the Vorthak, and what they had witnessed had moved them to action. A tall, blue-skinned alien who looked like a walking tree carefully lifted Han Sol, while his companion, a creature covered in silver fur, supported Midnight. "This way," the tree-like being said in broken galactic standard. "We help." All across the prison, cell doors were opening as Dong Hyun's virus spread through the security systems. Human prisoners emerged from their cells to find Nari and the other coordinators waiting with maps and supplies. "Move quickly, but stay quiet," Nari instructed. "Stick to the routes we planned. The shuttles are waiting." But in the arena, Han Sol and Midnight were in no condition to join the escape. Both were badly poisoned and barely conscious. The alien spectators who had come to their aid were trying to help, but they did not know how to treat sandworm venom. Mi Young, the elderly former nurse, appeared at the arena entrance with a small group of volunteers. She had refused to evacuate with the others, choosing instead to search for the wounded. "Bring them here," she called to the helpful aliens. "I know how to treat these injuries." As the old woman worked to save Han Sol and Midnight, the sounds of fighting echoed through the prison corridors. The Vorthak guards were trying to regain control, but the escaping prisoners outnumbered them and knew the layout better than their captors expected. Young Bin appeared at the arena entrance, having been freed from solitary confinement when all the doors opened. He looked exhausted but determined as he helped carry his injured friends toward the escape route. "The others?" Han Sol managed to whisper. "Safe," Young Bin replied. "Most of them are already at the shuttles, but we need to move now before the Vorthak organize a proper response." As they made their way through the dark corridors, Han Sol realized that something fundamental had changed. The alien spectators who had helped them in the arena were following, along with prisoners from other species who had been inspired by the human escape attempt. This was no longer just a human breakout. It was becoming something much larger and much more dangerous for the Vorthak, who had built their empire on the belief that other species were naturally inferior and divided. The shuttle bay was in chaos when Han Sol and Midnight arrived, supported by Young Bin and Mi Young. Human prisoners were loading supplies and helping the wounded into 3 captured Vorthak transport ships. But they were not alone. Dozens of alien prisoners from other species had joined the escape, inspired by what they had witnessed in the arena. Nari stood at the main control console, coordinating the evacuation while Dong Hyun worked frantically to override the shuttle bay's security. "Systems!" The young hacker looked up as his friends arrived. "The main doors are locked down tight," he reported. "I can open them, but it will take another 10 minutes, and the noise will bring every guard in the complex." "Then we make noise," Nari decided. "Better to fight our way out than wait here to be recaptured." But Han Sol could see that Midnight was getting worse. The creature's breathing was shallow and labored, and his amber eyes kept losing focus. The sandworm venom was spreading through his system faster than Mi Young's limited medical supplies could counteract it. "Leave me here," Midnight whispered in Korean, so quietly that only Han Sol could hear. "Take the others and go." "No," Han Sol replied firmly, gripping his friend's massive hand. "We started this together. We finish it together." Midnight managed a weak smile. "The Kim family taught me that sometimes the greatest loyalty requires the hardest sacrifice. I cannot run anymore, but I can still protect." Before Han Sol could stop him, Midnight stood up with tremendous effort and walked toward the shuttle bay's main entrance. His body was failing, but his will remained strong. He placed his hands against the massive blast doors that separated them from the corridor full of approaching Vorthak guards. "What is he doing?" Young Bin asked in alarm. The answer came as a soft, warm light began to glow from Midnight's hands. The same healing energy he had used to save Han Sol's life was now being channeled in a different way. Instead of healing, he was using every bit of his remaining strength to reinforce the blast doors. The metal began to change under his touch, becoming stronger and thicker. What had been a simple barrier became an impenetrable wall. The Vorthak guards on the other side hammered against it with their weapons, but nothing could break through. "He is buying us time," Nari realized. "But it is killing him." Han Sol tried to go to Midnight's side, but the creature had used so much energy that the air around him was dangerous to approach. Waves of heat and light poured from his body as he gave everything he had to protect his friends. "The doors are opening!" Dong Hyun shouted from his console. The massive shuttle bay doors began to slide apart, revealing the star-filled space beyond. The first transport ship lifted off immediately, carrying the children and the most vulnerable prisoners to safety. The second ship followed with the elderly and wounded. But the third ship waited, its engines ready, but its boarding ramp still lowered. "Everyone is aboard except us," Nari reported. "We need to go now." But Han Sol could not leave Midnight behind. His friend had sacrificed everything to save them, and now the creature was dying alone while protecting their escape. The light from his hands was growing dimmer, and his massive body was starting to collapse. Young Bin made the decision for all of them. He grabbed Han Sol under the arms and began dragging him toward the ship. "He chose this! Do not make his sacrifice meaningless!" As they reached the boarding ramp, the reinforced blast doors finally began to crack. Midnight's strength was almost gone, but he had held them long enough. The creature fell to his knees, his amber eyes finding Han Sol one last time. "Go," Midnight said, his voice barely a whisper. "Live free. Remember my family. Remember me." The transport ship lifted off just as the Vorthak guards broke through the weakened doors. They fired their weapons at the escaping vessel, but it was too late. The ship was already beyond their range and accelerating toward the edge of the prison. Moon's gravity well. In the pilot's seat, Nari activated the communication device she had hidden throughout her imprisonment. The signal that emerged was not just a call for help, but a broadcast that would reach human colonies throughout this sector of space. This is Nari Kim, former diplomatic attaché to the Terran Colonial Council. I am broadcasting from Escaped, transport vessel Midnight's Hope with 43 human survivors and over 60 alien allies from Keth 7 prison complex. We have evidence of Vorthak war crimes and need immediate assistance. The response came faster than any of them had expected. 3 human warships appeared at the edge of the system, their powerful engines already accelerating toward the prison, Moon. Behind them came ships from a dozen other species, all drawn by the news that someone had successfully escaped from the galaxy's most notorious prison. Midnight's Hope, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Defiance. We have been searching for you for over a year. Prepare to be taken aboard. As their small transport ship docked with the massive human warship, Han Sol looked back at the prison, Moon growing smaller behind them. Midnight was gone, but his sacrifice had saved not just the human prisoners, but dozens of aliens who had found hope in his example. 6 months later, Han Sol stood in a garden on New Jeju Colony, watching human. Children play alongside young creatures from a dozen different species. The colony had been rebuilt as an interspecies sanctuary, a place where beings of all kinds could live together in peace. Youngbin approached, carrying a small plant in a ceramic pot. I found this growing where Midnight fell in the shuttle. Bay. The botanists say it is a species that only grows where an umbral guardian has died. They call it a memory flower. Han Sol took the pot carefully and knelt to plant the flower in the garden's center. Around him, the sounds of different languages mixed together as species that had once been enemies learned to communicate and cooperate. He would have liked this place, Han Sol said softly. He made this place possible, Youngbin corrected. Every species that saw the broadcast knows now that loyalty and love are not weaknesses. They are the strongest forces in the universe. Nari joined them in the garden, carrying a tablet with the latest news from the Galactic Confederacy. The Vorthak Empire was crumbling as world after world rebelled against their rule. The footage of Midnight's sacrifice had spread to every corner of the galaxy, inspiring beings everywhere to stand up for each other. The tribunal wants you to testify about the prison conditions, she told Han Sol. Your words could help convict the remaining Vorthak leadership. Han Sol nodded, still looking at the memory flower as it took root in the rich soil. I will tell them about a creature they called a beast, who had more honor than any of their commanders. I will tell them about sacrifice and loyalty and love. Dong-hyun appeared at the garden entrance, leading a group of alien visitors who had come to see the sanctuary. Among them was the tall, tree-like being who had helped in the arena. He approached Han Sol with slow, respectful steps. Human friend, the alien said in careful galactic standard. My people want to know more about this concept you call loyalty. We have never seen anything like what your friend did for you. Han Sol smiled and gestured to the thriving garden around them, where dozens of species worked and played together in harmony. Then stay and learn. Midnight taught us that family is not about what species you are or where you come from. It is about who you choose to protect. As the sun set over New Jeju Colony, the memory flower began to glow with a soft amber light. In that light, Han Sol could almost see Midnight's gentle eyes, watching over the peaceful world that his sacrifice had made possible. The creature they had dismissed as a beast had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be civilized. And in a universe that had forgotten the value of loyalty and love, that lesson was spreading like ripples across the stars, changing everything it touched. The war against the Vorthak was far from over, but it would be won not through superior weapons or tactics, but through the simple truth that Midnight had lived and died to prove. When beings of different species chose to trust each other, to protect each other, to love each other, they became stronger than any empire built.